Alright, every once in a while I see a post or a tweet that says something along the lines of, these crossovers were goated and legendary, and it usually includes the Jimmy Timmy Power Hour, one or both of the big Disney Channel crossovers involving Hannah Montana, Sweet Life, That's So Raven, then Wizards of Waverly Place for the second one. Then there's the iParty with Victorious crossover special that gets included with this group when it doesn't deserve to be there. I've made some videos on this in the past, so this video is just going to be relaying most of those same points. I'm also going to give my solution for how this crossover could have been something. So yeah, it's time to get in here. First off, the way that the first half of this special is set up is really bad. It just isn't executed the best. It moves at a herky-jerky pace, flipping from an iCarly episode to a Victorious episode, say every 3 or so minutes. This rapid scene switching doesn't really give the crossover much time to set up anything meaningful when it comes to plot lines. Right when I'm getting into what the iCarlys have to offer, they're going to interrupt it and switch to a short Victorious section, and it just keeps on going like that for the first section of the movie. But at least it's understandable to be flipping back and forth between plot lines because they're in two different locations, Seattle and Los Angeles. Maybe it shouldn't have been in two separate places for so long, but it makes sense. Where it gets really frustrating is when everyone was at the party and they just kept on switching back and forth between plot lines rather than having a unified story that involved everyone. There was only one relevant plot line, which was with Stephen Carson, Tori, and the Golden Trio. But whenever that was getting good, they would switch over to Andre chasing a guy in a panda suit, or Trina babysitting, or Sinjin playing this surfboard game when I don't care about any of that random stuff. And speaking of those supplemental plots, that brings me to the biggest reason why this crossover isn't good. This crossover lacks interaction between these two casts. They made sure to have Tori and the Golden Trio interact, so they at least gave the bare minimum. But when it comes to other interactions, they weren't really that meaningful or entertaining. It was just Gibby and Kat having a short conversation, Spencer being there for the Sikowitz, Beck, and Jade acting thing, but he didn't contribute much to any of that. Then there's Rex and Sam's rap battle, which was actually good, but that's it. And I'm not counting that big mashup song at the end because that was so random. The characters barely even met each other, and the iCarlys probably shouldn't even know the lyrics to make it shine. Also, Jade was being nice to Tori, so it felt like more of an actor performance rather than the characters performing, and it was just made to have a happy ending. It didn't matter if it made sense. Even if I were to count that, it's still not enough. I would prefer to have them talking to each other rather than singing a song. Not only did they not have unexpected interactions like, say, Carly and Sikowitz or Spencer and Trina, but they also didn't have the obvious interactions that were right there in front of their faces, like Robbie and Freddie, Jade and Sam, which ended up happening in Sam and Kat, but no one ever mentions this crossover in their respective shows or in Sam and Kat, meaning that this isn't even canon, which, for as bad as it was, at least make it canon to build off of it and have storylines to stem from it. When Victorious got bad in season 3, it probably could have used a soft sequel to iParty with Victorious with Sam rather than having that crazy Pawnee episode. So it's a missed opportunity in that sense as well, because this probably could have been built off of. So now I want to fix this special and make it more of an actual crossover rather than everyone being in the same place but barely interacting. First off, just find a way to get them together sooner. I'm going to talk about changing the plot soon, but even if they kept the premise the same, but they were in the same area for most of the crossover, then I'd probably have a little more respect for this crossover. But that's not what happened. The first half of this episode felt like watching an iCarly episode, then switching back to a Victorious episode, which I've already seen a lot of up to this point. I want something different, and going with a more unified approach probably could have made the difference and made it feel special, but that was not the case. I have changes that I would like to make to get them in a room together sooner, but it would involve changing the plot a lot and making it completely different, which I didn't want to, but maybe that's what this special needed to maximize the amount of interaction between the two casts. I like the Victorious setting more with Hollywood Arts, but it wouldn't make sense for the iCarlys to go to Hollywood Arts because they're also in school, so the more realistic option would be to invite the Victorious cast to a web show. They're not famous, but they're the best performers at a good school, so maybe the iCarlys find out about them one day and invite them to a web show, and then the plot would go on from there. At the beginning of the special, just have Tori running in saying that they're invited to be on iCarly, cut the plane ride, and just like that, they're in Seattle with the iCarlys, and they have a whole episode to meet each other and mess around. Like, I don't have much after that, but at least it gets them there sooner and they can formally meet instead of being so distant like in the actual crossover. So the main point here was that regardless of the plot, they just needed to actually cross over sooner instead of having the back and forth for half of the special. Secondly, the central plot should have been relevant to more people than just Tori and the Golden Trio. They can have stuff going on in the background for sure, but not too much stuff like in the original special. The main plot was good, but they kept on cutting away from it for stuff that I mentioned earlier that wasn't interesting and really just filler content. Instead of having Kat using her phone to talk, maybe get her involved in the main plot. Maybe have Steve and Carson trying to make a move on her and add to the drama instead of having her be so distant from anything relevant that's going on. Outside of the rap battles, I wasn't interested in any of the filler content that everyone else got. So this special would have been better if everyone had a role to play in the main plot that was actually good instead of breaking off into random plots. Also, by having everyone in the same plot, that'll increase the amount of meaningful interactions there are, which was by far the biggest problem with this quote-unquote crossover. Crossover in quotes because they barely crossed over. They barely interacted with anyone because everyone was stuck in their own random plots. So if those random plots were taken out, then everyone could have met for real and some interesting dynamics could have been showcased, like Robbie and Freddie geeking out over some nerd stuff, or Sam and Jade having mutual respect for each other, or maybe there's conflict between them because of their similar archetype. Then for some randomness to have the element of surprise, have like Carly and Psychowitz exchange words, have Sinjin and Spencer talk to each other. Now that's a crossover. For years, I said that iParty with Victorious was a top tier episode of both shows because it was the crossover. It's all of my favorite characters all in one room. How could it be bad? That same line of thinking got me to think that Total Drama All-Stars was good. Yes, iParty with Victorious's main draw is that all of these great characters are all together in one room. But when actually watching it, it's clear to see that that's all they had. They had big names, but they did nothing with them because of the lack of interactions. It just feels so lazy, like that's all they were banking on. Just having everyone in one episode is going to be enough, to which it was for years. But now that I'm growing up and being able to fully see the flaws with this special and the amount of effort that was put into this special, it's not enough. iParty with Victorious could have been so much more if it lived up to its potential. It could have been a top 10 episode of both shows, but unfortunately, it goes down as a missed opportunity. But yeah, that is all for now.